This is really a service about two simultaneous realities. First, the reality that many people want someone to ride into town and change things. Second, the reality that we're disappointed by that person, or they do things that we didn't anticipate, and that at that point we'll watch or help tear them down. We'll do that with leaders who are good and leaders who are bad both. We'll do it with leaders who are both good and bad, which is, after all, most of them. We'll do it with leaders who are of nearly unimpeachable character and leaders whose character is almost entirely absent. This day, this service, is about the realities we all live with. We want things to be better, and we don't have the capacity, most of us, to see what better would be and support what it would take to put it into action. Jesus rode into town one day, got a ticker tape parade, or the equivalent of it, and then a few days later he was nailed to the cross to die. And yet, somehow, a lot of people still think this Sunday is about welcoming Jesus in triumph, when that's only a smidgen of what this is about. It's about profound misunderstanding of what's going on, most profoundly. Almost everyone except Jesus has no idea where this story is headed. Remember when President Bush, God bless him, in 2003 stood on that aircraft carrier underneath the banner that read "Mission Accomplished" and said that major combat operations in Iraq were over? That was a Palm Sunday sort of moment, thinking the story was headed one direction when it very shortly would become clear that it was going in another direction entirely. Anybody of any political persuasion who thinks that banner and that speech was true in retrospect, regardless of what they believe about the justice of the war or the necessity of the war, has not been paying attention during the ensuing nearly 3 decades. President Bush was not dumb, nor were his advisors. Agree or disagree with them. They were bright people. It's possible for very bright people, and even for just regular folks like us, to fail to understand the story we're living in, to fail to understand their moment and what choice to make in that moment, to fail to understand how our choices now will impact our own lives and those around us in the future. There are countless examples of moments just like the one on that aircraft carrier. We all have them. His just happened to be recorded by history. Thankfully, mine generally haven't been published as widely. Jesse probably remembers a few, as do others who know me well. I'm sure my kids will bring some up later on, either in therapy or over holiday dinners. But that's in the nature of human life, that we are imperfect and that within ourselves or the systems of relationships we live within, those moments occur. It's actually best that we not forget them and that we try not to change what they meant so that we look better. As a matter of fact, that's at the heart of what it is to be a Christian, to understand that we are constantly learning, reevaluating, and even realizing that even if we are tremendously faithful, we're capable of being utterly wrong about things that we thought we understood very well. It helps, of course, if we're paying attention. Myself, I was so focused on the enormous developments in our own congregation that until a month ago, I really didn't pay much attention to what the scientists were warning us about with this pandemic. Maybe you were caught off guard too. Maybe you, like me, thought things were going one way, but we missed that major development that, at least for the near future, has changed our story. What shook me out of the one understanding of what I should be doing and into another was that I finally heard in the voice of a very wise colleague the importance of the warnings that we were getting. It was really only a few days that I was insisting that coronavirus and the pandemic were a distraction, but figuring out that this is a major change in the story, at least for now, was critical. How often do we think the story is headed in one direction until it becomes impossible to avoid the fact that it's going in another direction entirely? Not every day, but often enough. And that's what Palm Sunday is about. Just the fact that so many of us call it Palm Sunday rather than its actual name, the Sunday of the Passion, is telling. The palms, the first century ticker tape that we normally would wave around, if this Sunday were in any way normal, are really to many of us, an ironic statement. We wave them and welcome Jesus, but we're also the people who later on would arrest him, try him, run away and abandon him, torment him, and stand by and watch as he is humiliated and then killed. Maybe you're different. Maybe you're that rare Christian, that unicorn who has never failed to stand with Jesus, but I'm not. I've run away. I've stood by and watched as others were hurt and done nothing to intercede. I've even convinced myself that I was doing nothing wrong in the moment. Most of the year, my memories of past failings lie peacefully in the deepest recesses of my mind, sleeping undisturbed. Not today. Today, they throw off the covers and get up, stretch, and walk around as we read the lessons. Today, the story of what was and what is reality refuses to remain closeted in the back of my mind. This is a story that is woven into the reality of every human life. It is, in fact, the great tragedy of every human life, that we are not living the lives we thought we were living, that we are causing ourselves and others harm very often without realizing it, that we are often celebrating for the wrong reasons, that we are often crying out and condemning for the wrong reasons, all because we're not listening to the right voice and following up on our listening by living the right way. And to be honest, even listening to the right voice, Jesus' voice, doesn't make us immune to making mistakes. Even living a life patterned after his apostles' lives, doesn't remove us from the influence of that story. We're destined to be characters in this story, sometimes over and over, and every single time we fall short, every single time we fail, run away, succumb to our anger, or slip into complacency and the bliss of ignorance, the story begins anew because of what happens 1 week from today.